In the Danish capital, Copenhagen, is Mohammed Shehada, Chief of Communications at the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor. Mohammed, thank you very much indeed for your time. I understand that you have colleagues who are currently working in Gaza, and I was just wondering how long they've been there, because obviously it's been too dangerous for many aid workers to actually perform their functions. How long have they been there and what have they seen?
Well, we have our local staff in Gaza. We lost at least 4 members up until this moment that were killed in Israeli airstrikes. And my colleagues are mostly displaced either inside Gaza City itself or in the south of Gaza, where it's supposed to be relatively safer, but about 42% of the casualties emanate from that purportedly safe south. And it's been very dire for them to just basically survive. So instead of being able to carry out their responsibilities and duties, they have to spend a whole day just to get a few pieces of flatbread and another whole day just to get water. And it's becoming near impossible to maintain consistent communication lines with our staff, but it works occasionally from time to time where we are able to establish a line and receive updates.
We know that around 16,000 Gazan civilians so far are confirmed to have been killed by Israeli attacks. But the fears are that underneath the rubble, especially in the north of Gaza, there are going to be many, many more remains found. And this episode clearly has not ended yet. We may be in a truce, but everybody believes that Israel, once the pause ends, will start its attacks again. I mean, what are the fears? What are your fears about what may be happening in Gaza that is so far unseen?
Well, every person that we talk to in Gaza says that this war, it's impossible to exaggerate or even describe the situation accurately. What we see on camera, the information we get, is just a mere fraction of what is unfolding on the ground. So it's basically, as you said, there's an estimated 4,000 to 7,000 people missing, different varying estimations, and most of those people are presumed dead by now under the rubble of their homes. And every day, every hour of this temporary ceasefire, more and more atrocities come to light. So yesterday at the Al-Nasser hospital, pediatric hospital for children, about 4 or 5 decomposing bodies of babies were found in the intensive care unit that were left behind and not evacuated by Israeli soldiers that took over the facility. So the level of atrocities that is unfolding up until now, that is one thing that we are extremely worried about. But we're also extremely worried that the magnitude of destruction that Israel has inflicted on both the north and south of Gaza, where over 1.7 million have been displaced, 75% of Gaza's population, and over 50% of housing units in all of the Gaza Strip have been damaged. This level and magnitude of destruction will render Gaza incapable of sustaining organized human life for decades to come, based on the continuation of the Israeli siege and restrictions on reconstruction that were in place even before this war started.
Mohammed, there was a doctor, I believe he's British Arab. I can't remember which specific Middle Eastern country his roots are from. But he returned to the UK and he gave an interview and he said the conditions for healthcare are like World War I. He said, just before I came back to the UK, I had to go to a shop to buy cleaning liquid that you use to clean plates and dishes to clean the wound of a child that had maggots in it. There were insects and creatures growing inside the child's wound. How much responsibility does Israel bear in terms of human rights and the rights of civilians who are caught in conflict, and what responsibilities the two sides who are fighting have towards those civilians?
Well, basically, Israel bears the primary responsibility here because its troops and ground invasion are the ones that rendered every single hospital in the northern half of Gaza out of service, inoperable, and they even went inside hospitals based on a unsubstantiated, I would say, pure lie that these hospitals were used for military purposes. And after 3 weeks of raids in Gaza, and after 2 weeks of taking over the hospitals and inspecting them thoroughly, Israel never provided any evidence of its claims to back these claims. But on the other side, Israel has kidnapped a number of doctors. For instance, they kidnapped over 5 doctors from Al-Shifa hospital without any charges or trial or legal counsel, and they remain missing until today, 11 days later, as well as incapacitating and bombing different medical facilities. Over 46 ambulances were hit and targeted and bombed during this war. So Israel has systematically and surgically rendered hospitals in the northern half of Gaza inoperational and out of service. In the southern half, hospitals are completely overwhelmed, completely understaffed, and overcrowded. And the siege that Israel has imposed on Gaza means that most of the most basic medicines, the majority of them, are completely missing, including basic drugs, anesthesia, and disinfectants. That's why people have been using, as you said, using basic soap and dishwashing equipment to sterilize wounds where maggots are coming out of it. I receive stories every day and pleads for help from people in Gaza. So yesterday there was one young man that went to inspect his home in Gaza City in an area called the Litwam, and he was shot by Israeli soldiers in the lower abdomen, and the bullet penetrated and exited from his back. His parents tried to take him to at least 3 different hospitals in Gaza City and in the north of Gaza. None of them were able to receive him. So his parents ended up putting him literally in a shopping cart and walking on foot for over 10 kilometers until they reach to the south of Gaza. And even there, hospitals are completely overwhelmed. You have to stand in queue until you receive full and proper treatment, which might even take years if people need reconstructive surgery. I have another colleague whose brother was wounded in an Israeli airstrike, and he called me yesterday crying and begging for help to get his brother out of Gaza to receive medical treatment. He's a very bright young man who studied a PhD in quantum physics. And basically, Israel is the one that's controlling even the Egyptian Rafah border crossing at the moment. So they are the ones who say who can go out and who cannot. And up until now, his brother's name didn't show up on the list of people to be evacuated to receive medical treatment. So the level of atrocity, the cruelty, and the horrendous violence that Israel is inflicting on Gaza is unprecedented and unheard of in any other conflict around the world for the last at least 3 decades in terms of the magnitude, severity, and scale relative to the population size and the time of the conflict.
Mohammed, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Mohammed Shehada.